Today on LawNext, I guess is a story that many lawyers will recognize. Late nights in the office, repetitively copying and pasting contract language, wondering if there could be a better way. But unlike most of us, Shashank Bijapur actually did something about it. The co-founder and CEO of contract lifecycle management company SpotDraft, Shashank is a Harvard Law graduate who started as a corporate lawyer at White & Case. He made the leap from practicing law to building technology after a fateful New Year's Eve moment, eating Chinese food, working on diligence reports, and reading about Elon Musk building self-driving cars. That moment of realization that cars were driving themselves while lawyers were still stuck copying and pasting contract language sparked a journey that would lead to SpotDraft, a company that just raised $54 million in Series B funding and that counts major companies like Airbnb among its clients. Today we'll explore Shashank's evolution from lawyer to entrepreneur, how SpotDraft pivoted from its original vision to become a leading CLM platform, and what the integration of generative AI means for the future of contract management. I'm Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to any of that, please take a moment to hear from the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Lawyers should be lawyering. That's why tens of thousands of successful lawyers use Practice Panther to manage their firms. Practice Panther is an all-in-one solution that helps firms of all sizes streamline their workflows, easily track time, manage documents, streamline client intake, and process online payments without ever leaving the platform. Learn more about what Practice Panther has to offer at practicepanther.com. You didn't go to law school to waste time writing and responding to discovery requests. Never waste time on discovery again with BriefPoint. BriefPoint drafts your discovery responses and requests for documents within minutes of your first sign-in. BriefPoint is the most reliable discovery drafting solution on the market, and it works right out of the box. Get your first document drafted by going to briefpoint.ai and clicking Get Started. No credit card required. BriefPoint. Draft what matters, automate the rest. Now let's get to today's conversation. Shashank, welcome to LawNext.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you for inviting. In fact, this is a fan moment for me to be on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm very happy to talk to you and look forward to our conversation today. I wanted to start before we talk about SpotDraft with a little bit about your own career journey. You went to Harvard Law School. You were an associate at White & Case for a couple of years. What inspired you to want to transition from practicing corporate law to becoming an entrepreneur?
To start with things, I think one of which I have to say is your blog. I did not know the word legal tech until I started reading your blog. And that sort of got me reading into what's happening with technology. And then it was this one fateful New Year's Eve, picture me eating Chinese food and doing diligence reports. And then I open up New York Times and I read about this guy who's building a self-driving car. And this was Elon Musk then. And I'm thinking, wait, cars are driving themselves. And I'm still here copying, pasting words on a contract. Something had to change. So I looked around and I said, hey, look, let's try and find out what's the greatest innovation that lawyers had seen. I started looking at paper processes. We had books of accounts, and you would remember that books of accounts were actual books of accounts until they got digitized. And then I remember as a kid taking these reels of film and going into a dark room and getting them developed. And then, Adobe came in and you and I can take a selfie and put it on Facebook. But what happened with contracts? We were still stuck in the Stone Ages. The greatest innovation was track changes that came to Word in 1993. And fast forward 25 years, we were still stuck there. So something had to change there.
Yeah. Still, you were practicing law and toiling away into the wee hours of the morning. It sounds like Was there sort of a moment where you said, this is what I want to do and here's how I'm going to do it?
It wasn't that clear. I knew something had to change. I didn't know how to do it, what to do it. And law school prepares you in some ways to be an entrepreneur, but definitely does not prepare you to start a technology startup. Uh, there's a difference. Along the way, I went from being this, hey, I want to do a legal tech startup to a technology driven legal startup. And then now at some point, a SaaS startup which has technology in play built for lawyers. So I think there are various stages of evolution that happened there.
Yeah. This was, I think, 2017 that you started SpotDraft, you and your co-founder, and then a subsequent third co-founder, I think, was added as well. But did you kind of look around the market at what was out there already in terms of contract software and come to a evaluation that led you to think there's a gap there that needs to be filled?
We did. So we actually started and failed from 2017, and I'll talk through that. 2017 to 17 was when the company was incorporated. 18 was first line of code between Madhav and me, and we started asking lawyers, folks, where do you spend the most amount of time? And everybody said redlining, and it's this negotiation, and that's what's taking up space. So we said, okay, that is what we need to solve. So we said, we are going to build the world's best redlining platform that helps you identify good, bad, and ugly from a contract, and creates this AI-driven revolution. That's where we started. But then we realized in a couple of years that we were as good as a coin toss, which is 60% accurate, and that wasn't going anywhere. And the core reason for all of this was because we didn't have enough data. And, that's how the evolution of SpotDraft from being this AI redlining platform to, hey, let's figure out how people work and understand data points. That's where we said, you can write a love letter on Word, but you can also do a contract, but it's not purpose built for contracting. So we started building an editor that was purpose built for contracting. How does something come into an editor? People said it's called a workflow. Okay, where does it get stored? It's called a repository. Then we said, what is this animal? And they said, this animal is called a CLM. And that's in 2020 was when we used the word CLM for the first time, um, just so that we could get better understanding of data to build a better redlining platform.
And just a side note, you mentioned Madhav, I believe his name is Bhagat. If I may be pronouncing that poorly, but he was your co-founder then. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it is.
Yeah.
And so Madhav is, he went to CMU, undergrad, went to, yeah, and then worked at Google in New York. I met him at a party in New York, the same party where I met my wife. So we had a lot of startups
Good party.
and marriages that happened there.
Yeah, I want to go to a party like that. So 2020, you kind of started to get it to the point of where you wanted it. There's been, well, so at what point did you was that when you kind of finally sort of commercially put it out there and started marketing the product, or were you still working on developing and building it out at that point?
So we did the mistake of marketing the product first and sort of building it as customers were talking about it, because the
You
marketing
would not
part
be
of
the
it,
first to have done that, but
yeah, but yeah, I agree, but we were really naive. We thought we had nailed the idea, we had nailed what we wanted to build, and we could do this. We figured it out, but it was a lot of co-building, and I want to call out some of our early customers who saw that in us, didn't let us feel like we were amateurs, but helped us co-build the product in the way that they wanted it to be, but also understood that this wasn't a services company. We were building a product, and helped us take some of those back. So we went from this journey of almost failing with what we were doing to suddenly realizing it's not a spaceship that people want. They just want a simple car, and they just want to go from place A to place B, and let's just build those basics first correctly.
So, how did you kind of start to score some of those initial customers that came aboard and helped you build this out?
So we said, at that point came Akshay, who led sales for us, and he said, "Hey, what's my job?" And we didn't have a product for him to sell. I said, "Figure out a way that we can be the number one CLN in this street that you see in front of us." So that was the core thing. But we realized very quickly that lawyers are not very receptive to change. And there were a certain kind of lawyers who were more receptive, and those tend to be in growth stage companies, companies that were scaling very quickly. They were okay with breaking things, and bugs were fine. And we quickly realized that that was the spot that we had to land in with this, at that point, a very experimental product that we had.
Since 2020, a lot has happened. There was the pandemic for one thing, but probably more uh, relevant or more significant in terms of your own product development has been the advent of generative AI. And, the legal industry as it was in 2020, 2021 is probably not the legal industry as it is today. So how has your company evolved and kind of where are you today?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, this is a natural evolution of where we wanted to be but failed. And then we were sitting on data, we were sitting on analytics, we were sitting on learnings, we were working off BERT, which was the state of the art before LLMs came in, and we were banging ready to launch our version of how to interpret data. But Madhav had the foresight, and he said this once, man, look, large language models, you got to focus on the word language. Legal language is amongst the most difficult languages that you read. Nothing else reads like notwithstanding anything contained in this agreement and subject to clause 3.4. And that's the only kind of language in a company that requires somebody to have gone to law school, passed the bar, figured out, hey, I'd like to work in house. So, which means it is, and in the real world, it costs $1,400. So, it's a deep end of the language. We're going to make the most impact, but that's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. So we we knew that this was going to be a game changer, but we obviously didn't know how to present it, how to sell it, what the GTM would look like, what pricing would look like, and of course the 50 different hurdles that we faced on the journey to building what we are building today.
Somebody watching or listening to this conversation right now who's never heard of Spot Draft, maybe there's somebody out there like that. I don't know if there is, but how do you describe what you are today, and what are some of the key features and functionality that you offer?
Yeah, SpotDraft is building the future of how legal works. And the first problem we're trying to solve is with contracts. We're a contract management and automation platform that helps businesses create, manage, analyze, and collaborate on contracts. We work with high growth companies that help that have a challenge with figuring out how do you get from quote to cash, and we speed up that journey.
Mm-hmm. And you've got some. I know you've got some pretty big, high-profile clients you talk about, including Airbnb. Who I gave a lot of money to Airbnb last week, so I hope that helps them pay your bill anyway. One of the big developments that's happened for you recently is your raise. You raised $54 million in a Series B round just in February. You had previously raised 26 million in a Series A round in 2023. What does raising that kind of capital mean for you, for your company, and but more importantly for your customers and your future customers?
Yeah, I think so. I was just going through some of my old emails, and I would get emails initially that would say, "Hey, from VCs talking about we're interested in investing in a internet business." which followed by we are interested in investing in a SaaS business. And now I get emails which say we are interested in investing in a legal tech business. Legal tech went from being, you know, a small footnote somewhere to having its own line item. And we've been able to build that because of three things. First is I think our customers who've really had faith in what we were building and gave that early signals. Second is it's the people around us who had the faith of coming in and working for a company that did something with contracts and for lawyers, and these are engineers, just having that motivation. And then lastly but not the least, people like you who've been great proponents and have spread the word of the fact that something like this exists and have helped us along the way. I think all of these three things together has brought the industry to a point where some of us are being recognized. What it means for us as a business is it just shows the amount of faith and money that people are able to put behind a very, very foundational problem such as contracts, which is the building block of every business. So it just shows the coming of age for companies like us.
Yeah, I mean, specifically in terms of how do you use that money? Is that going towards further development and engineering? Does it go toward sales and marketing? How does it? How will we using it to kind of drive your future growth?
Yeah, so there's three things. Yes, it's a large chunk of it obviously is towards R&D. We're also investing heavily in building a world-class team. So if you're out there listening to this, looking to join a high-growth company, please reach out to me. And then,
Or go to that party you go to? But
yes, that too. And then those are the two big places where we are
Mhm.
investing our money.
Yeah, one of the ways that the legal tech market has evolved again since 2020 or even back to 2017 when you first started thinking about this is that CLM has become a major category of technology, meaning there are a number of major providers of CLM technology in the market. So when you're having a conversation with a general counsel or chief legal officer or whoever it might be at a legal ops, what do you tell them about why SpotDraft over versus X company or Y company out there?
Yeah, so we're built by lawyers for lawyers, and we're great value for money as a company. The two reasons why implementations like platforms like CLM fail in a company, and an overwhelming number is because of two reasons. First was it was poorly adopted, or it was poorly implemented. And we offset both of them. We do implementation on our own dime, and we do it in record time. And second is we give the best in class customer success and support. Lawyers were not meant to buy technology. That's not their strongest suite. So we make it easier for them to a figure out what the choice is. Need not be spot draft, whatever that is. So right from that sales process. Two, when they're using SpotDraft, we make it easier for them to get it evangelized both within the legal team and in the ecosystem that they operate in. And that's what our customers say over and over again. It it looks good, it's simple, it's great value for money, and it is done where it's de-risk either adoption or implementation.
And how is Gen AI kind of further driving the evolution and development of this product? I mean, I know that in April, SpotDraft published a survey on AI's impact on legal departments. A really interesting survey. I wrote about it on my blog. What are you seeing? What are you thinking in terms of how is Gen AI changing how legal departments negotiate, execute, manage everything else involving their contracts?
So I'll take a step back. CLMs have existed for now over 2, 3 decades now.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Nobody became a better lawyer using a CLM. What happened is that process of contracting became way more streamlined. Now you had a funnel where you could get the contracts in, there was visibility, there was a structure to what seemed like a lot of madness. Now with Gen AI coming in, you're going from what was predominantly operational problem, you're cutting 3 layers deep, and you're going inside the law and figuring out whether that works for you or not. So that value system is vastly different, and it's a different solution there. And so there, I think, and that presents itself as an opportunity, both within the growth of the company, but also how deep you can go within a company. We recently launched Sidebar, and it's launching for the general public next month. It is, I mean, what we are hearing from our design partners, it's amongst the best generative AI platforms that they've seen. It is always, always connected and alive, which means anything changes either within your contracts or out in the outside world, it figures that out. It is grounded, so it never hallucinates, or rather, there is very little chance that it hallucinates. It is always grounded in the sources that it comes with, and it works very well with either a CLM or without a CLM. So you can do pretty much everything that you would want your legal team to do, whether it's raising tickets, whether it is answering questions on a contract, or just doing research, all of that end to end using that platform. And we've been able to do this not, you know, as a wrapper on a LLM with a few smart prompts at the back end. We're doing this with data points that we have learned, we have developed, and with a lot of proprietary IP that's gone into building this. So we weren't the first to launch this, but we are probably going to be amongst the most accurate sources of generative AI in the legal space.
And Sidebar is kind of like what you might call a legal assistant, sort of a tool, right?
Yes,
Is
it
that how you
is. It is
describe
a
it? Or
legal assistant because it's still a legal assistant, and at some point, when it gets better and smarter, hopefully, it can take on a different name.
yeah, okay, it can get promoted to a senior counsel or something like that, or.
Perhaps, and pass the bar exam.
I mean, it is an interesting conversation. I've been reading Richard Susskind's latest book, which isn't really focused on legal AI so much as just AI more broadly. But he talks about the extent to which we should expect that some of these legal assistants are going to be able to become almost fully autonomous in performing some of the tasks that lawyers now or other professionals now perform. What do you think about that? Are we going to get to that point?
I would not be surprised to see a law firm or a legal department have a manager that manages AI agents. It is going to be that. I see a fundamental difference in how one part of law will adopt it versus the others. Um, In-house teams, I feel, will see a lot more, will be more welcoming to something like this because they need to see that efficiency. I'm not really sure of law firms. I
Hmm.
keep hearing about law firms wanting to do it because, they want to be more accurate and efficient, but something's got to change in the way they bill in order for this to work. Otherwise, all of this is going to get into the R&D budget and not really into true product development on that segment.
Going back to that survey, or even just your own observations and conversations with customers in legal, to what extent are legal departments adopting AI, and to what extent are they doing it right or doing it effectively, if that's a difference?
So, the curiosity levels are off the charts. Um,
Yeah.
we don't have a single conversation where the word AI is not brought up as
Mm-hmm.
a requirement. And we are beginning to see RFPs where some loosely sort of defined version of AI needs to be there. But very few companies really know to what outcome, and they're not able to clearly define that. And the tectonic shift, just because we've sold AI before the LLM era, and we've we've had our own set of challenges there, is there was a lot of market education that we had to do on what AI could do. It would People would think this is a robot that will come clean your house, do your contracts, do your calls, do everything, absolutely spick and span and get done. But now I think there is a lot more awareness to the fact that, hey, look, there are inherent challenges with doing this. There are limitations, and but there are things that it's great with, and that cost of educating the market is a lot lesser. So to answer your question, I think the change that we are people know that AI is important. They don't know how it is important and how to use it. Very few people know it, and that part of the education is what we are doing in sort of talking about and evangelizing how this can be helpful.
We'll be right back with more of my conversation with Shashank Bijapur, CEO and co-founder of SpotDraft. When we return, we'll dig into some of the practical challenges legal departments face when implementing AI, including security and ethics concerns, and we'll get Shashank's advice on how to drive successful adoption within legal teams. But first, please take this opportunity to learn about the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. As an attorney, you know it's crucial to prioritize your client's needs. Practice Panther offers a comprehensive solution that automates internal processes and handles administrative tasks, allowing you to dedicate more time to nurturing stronger client relationships. With robust features like case management, automated billing, and client portals, Practice Panther prepares you with everything necessary to focus on serving your clients effectively. Tens of thousands of law firms already trust Practice Panther to manage their practices. Discover the benefits for yourself at practicepanther.com. If you're still spending hours on research, drafting, or analyzing case files, it's time to meet Paxton. Paxton is the legal AI assistant built for firms of all sizes. It helps you find relevant law fast, draft with precision, and pull insights from hundreds of pages instantly. There's no long-term contract, and the free trial makes it easy to get started. Try it today at paxton.ai and let them know LawNext sent you. Welcome back to LawNext. I'm speaking with Shashank Bijapur, CEO and co-founder of SpotDraft. Before the break, we were discussing how legal departments are embracing AI with enthusiasm, but often lack clarity on implementation. In the second part of our conversation, we'll explore some of the challenges and concerns around AI adoption, including security and ethics issues. We'll also get Shashank's advice for legal teams just getting started with AI tools, and look ahead to where the CLM market is heading in the age of generative AI. Let's get back to it. The report suggested that you're still seeing legal departments raise some concerns about, justifiable concerns about Gen AI, including security, ethics issues, those kinds of things. How are you kind of working with your customers to address those kinds of concerns?
So, with every new technology, this has been raised, and people have objected to, ethics and accuracy. But for us, we focused a lot on making sure that the data that we trained on was ethically correct, and we had the rights to train on them. Second, we also did a lot of focus on accuracy over everything else. We've seen this behavior with customers where they're going to try things for 3 times, and if it doesn't work the way they want it to work, they probably will not use it. And what we've done is we've ensured that either we don't answer the question, or we answer the question as damn close to the law as possible, with the right sources and with the sources that you would trust, whether it's Congress website for laws or specific people that we are partnering up with to ensure that case laws are accurately cited, the summaries are correct, the dicta is picked up. all of that is being done, and we focused on accuracy over everything else. And that's where our investment is. So those are the two pieces that we've worked on. And obviously, we've made it simple to use. The word prompting does not come up. It's easier. We've removed all the guesswork there, and we've ensured that some of the most common problems that legal teams face and the questions that they ask, the system is ready and accurate to answer them.
Is there sort of standard advice that you give, maybe to new customers who are just starting to become familiar with SpotDraft and other AI tools, in terms of how to how to scale up on this, how to get started on it, how to drive adoption within the department?
I think the first thing is a mind shift change where we tell them that think of this as you fresh out of law school, first day at your job. Do not expect it to do the kind of work that you would right now do if a task were to given to you. Look at it as something that gets you 70, 80% of the way, and tell it when it's wrong so that it's able to improve. So we've also built a system that is haptic in feedback. So moment you teach it something, it'll learn over a period of time. From an adoption perspective, we are currently focused on ensuring that in-house legal teams are the first adopters before they evangelize internally within the company. Uh, we would love for the sales team to go and get that question answered, but we understand some of the challenges that come with it. So our focus has been on getting in-house legal teams, up and running and getting that done. We've also launched a Slack bot that kind of filters through some of the questions and answers that are there on our sidebar platform and answers it directly to the end user. But we've not yet built it with the sales rep coming and asking the question and believing this is an actual lawyer answering.
As I mentioned earlier, you just raised the $54 million Series B, which is obviously an investment in the future of not just of your product, but of this market. How do you envision the CLM market evolving over the next, say, 5 years, or even more specifically, how do you envision SpotDraft evolving over the next 5 years, given the advent of Gen AI and everything else that's happening in the market right now?
Yeah, I think CLM will still, when I say CLM, contracts will still form a very core backbone of every company's business. And most of the things that are CLM today will form the architecture of how some of the more basic questions are answered and workflows work through. But the way it interacts with the customer is going to be a lot different. We don't expect the customer 2 years down the line to go in there and say, click new, create new contract, answer a few questions. We expect them to go into a dialog box and say, hey, can you create a contract, create an NDA with John Doe, similar to the one that we created with Jane day before yesterday. And for it to get you to 80% of the way and get the rest of the questions answered. So that will happen. And we see this as a way in which it's able to connect different pieces of data and get you insights that previously weren't there. So the DVD business of Netflix was very important for them to build their streaming business. And I feel like while it's an incorrect comparison to say CLM is the DVD business equivalent, but it is going to be very much the backbone and the foundation of how this new streaming business or the AI-driven business will work.
It's interesting. I once interviewed a CEO on this podcast who was the CEO of a contract review platform or tool, who was kind of critical of the idea of CLM platforms. The idea that his belief was that better to be a point solution doing one thing really well than to try and be a soup to nuts, do everything and not do it very well. So what's your take on that? Why is a sort of a all-in-one CLM better than a point review solution or a point something else solution?
So look, I respect that viewpoint, but you're building a system of intelligence. How do you build a system of intelligence without the system of collaboration and that repository that has seen that data flow through? So if you're building a redlining platform without ever having seen a damn redline, never having trained on version 1 through version 23, knowing that Sam from sales comes in and puts a comment, and then Bob from legal goes and makes that change, and that is how the system is supposed to work. If that training hasn't gone through, what you're doing is pretty much a lot of guesswork and a wrapper around LLM. And look, some of them will do well, they market themselves well, but the test of time will only be answered with the accuracy of how a platform works. And I feel like something like SpotDraft with its sidebar platform will be far superior than a standalone AI only platform.
Shifting gears a little bit, I know that last year SpotDraft was featured in Fast Company's Most Innovative Companies list. Congratulations on that. But I'm thinking back to earlier in this conversation when you said you were out of law school or when you decided to start this company and you hadn't learned about entrepreneurship. So, what have you learned about entrepreneurship and specifically about driving innovation within your own company?
Yeah. So I think one thing that I've learned is what you see, it's not as glamorous as it looks, and people often forget or ignore or don't talk about the incubation period that it takes from an ideation to early success to really seeing, some traction. That's one, and uh, it it requires the right set of people coming together to start, but also the support of the right team to help you build it. So entrepreneurship for me is two part. One is selling, which is selling to customers, selling to employees, selling to investors on the idea of what we're building, but also getting the right set of absolute crazy people who are focused and willing to build the future of how legal works. And if you can figure those two things out, it's great. I did do some work with people, and team building was not as big as a problem as for me to understand selling. I was
Mm-hmm.
always taught to be the more, I thought being demure is the right way to go about in this profession. So that was an acquired skill for me. And the last thing is appetite for risk is wildly different. I was taught to be risk averse, to take the more the more safe position, but going into this very, very aggressive position and taking some calls which which were deemed risky did not come naturally to me. But thankfully, I had the right co-founder in Madhav who ensured that he brought that muscle in.
So you needed to be a little more aggressive, maybe than was in your nature and what you were used to.
Yeah, now I've slowly turned into a little bit of a shark. No, I'm just kidding. But
Okay, that's all right. I'm curious, with all this talk about generative AI, how do you use it in your own life, in your own work?
so we do a lot of dog fooding. So we use Sidebar internally for pretty much everything and making sure it works fine. But for me, it's a lot of data analysis that I do. Second is I do use it a lot of times as a mentor to sort of tell me how do I process. On a side note, people talk about journeys as 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 and 10 to whatever. But I've realized that in a founder's journey, every time you go to 0 to 1, that 1 turns into 0, because everything that worked from 0 to 1 is not working from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. So for me to evolve as a company, the valuation might have gone up threefold, but my ability to process hasn't. So my sidekick is an LLM to just help me understand and learn more. But I use it for a lot of data processing internally and just kind of understanding trend lines in either people behavior or on how the market is reacting, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I've been asking you a lot of questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to say or point out about yourself, about SpotDraft, about the industry in general?
So, look, I think first of all, thank you for the opportunity, but more than that, it is now more than ever that we need the support and sort of the evangelism of people who are willing to try new products and talk about how this makes a change. So the offices of SpotDraft are always open to have discussions on how we can do better or what we should build next. So feel free to reach out to us. And if you're not using the best damn CLM in town, then please reach out to us, and we're happy to get you a license.
Sounds good. Well, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments, please do so. You can email me, ambrogi@gmail.com, or find me on LinkedIn or other social media. And if you like the show, leave us a review. LawNext is a production of LawNext Media. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of LawNext.